with some thoughts.
Thank you very much, Ben. Can you hear me? Yeah. First of all, let me just say, Tim, that I would give my 5 minutes just if you could even speak more, but unfortunately I have been assigned. So having said that, let me just say, I mean, I think this was powerful, and this was a huge message, not merely to the development community and to the humanitarian, but I think to a much wider community, a point I'd like to end on. I think one of the points that came out of this, as I look at Tim's discussion from a humanitarian-ish type perspective, is that I think what we do, and I think the whole system in which we purport to be involved, is far more complex than any of us actually realize. We're aware of the difficulties, but we're not really, I think, deeply embedded in the uncertainties and complexities which surround what we ostensibly try to do. And that's something that I certainly took from you. You know, one of the things that came out of the DFID's Humanitarian Emergency Response Review, the HER, was a recommendation that actually we should push more and more to accept failure. Let's try and accept failure. It is an extraordinary way to learn. And what was fascinating is to see that initial enthusiasm and then the cold institutional calculation as we backed out and people said, oh, what a very interesting idea, the death knell of all ideas. But Tim, here I think you've made such an important case. So if there's her too, I'll be back. I also think the point that you brought out about the worm's eye versus, if you like, the bird's eye was deeply important. And it linked, for me at least, into this whole question of, well, you just can't decentralize and let it go. I mean, it is the interaction that I took from that I felt was very, very important. And one of the things that I think we all see in our world, be it development or certainly in my case humanitarian, is this, well, you know, we've let you get on with it. And this, for those of you who follow, just to, if you like, really be politically incorrect, the emergency capacity building project, where it's now all sent, quote unquote, quote, to the field or somebody else's country. It really has no engagement with the headquarters that actually support it. So here too is, I think, part of that. The bird's eye view is important, and indeed, as you described it, so is the worm's eye view, but unless you have that interface, you really just do, quote unquote, leave soldiers dying. One of the things that also I was fascinated about, and again I see it in the humanitarian sector, is this whole question of speculation. I remember when I went to an organization and I said, you know, if you really try and deal with the complexities of the future, with the uncertainties, you have to be more speculative. You have to start dealing more with the what might be's. And they said, well, we do that. We have a policy department. And I said, but unless, if you like, you have an institution, and this is Google-esque, that actually holds store by speculating, by actually being rewarded, by having incentives to say it is worth daring to think about what most people don't think about. You have, if you like, an organization that eventually will be marginalized. And I think this is an issue for the humanitarian sector today. I think also, if I may just say, the idea of puncturing, if you like, the God complex is so vitally important. And I would just say here, who dares? Who dares go into an organization and say, but everything that you have now agreed with is completely wrong. Don't you really understand where I've led you? And then, if I may, also in that context, and Tim, I'm not sure how you would handle this, but let me just make the point. Certainly throughout Anglo-Saxon, Anglo-American bureaucracies, there's an obsession with evidence-based, which is, I find, just a killer of innovation, a killer of creativity. And evidence-based, and you've heard this discussion and argument all for a long time, I'm sure, but to some extent, what I've taken from you, Tim, is that, in a sense, people who can see a problem, and you didn't use this word, but let me see if this would work, almost intuitively, who get a sense that maybe this might be worth pursuing, don't need evidence-based to get launched. What they need is that certain security that this is worth probing. And so I'd like to also commend, I think, your remarks for that as well. You know, in conclusion, I'm going to reveal a secret just between you and myself. When all of this is over, and I have some time to write a book, it will be a book about the history of the 20th century in terms of organizational analysis. Because, Tim, I wonder where, with all this wisdom and all this insight, one can actually begin to change the dynamics of organizations in a way that really will go beyond the humanitarian sector, go beyond the development, but actually go to that point where the organizational constraints that affect us in almost everything we do can, if you like, be liberated. So, Tim, thank you very much for an outstanding presentation.
Thank you, Randolph.
Thank you.